Julius Caesar, one of history's greatest military leaders. But what made him an unstoppable force on the battlefield? It wasn't just his tactics. It was a combination of strategy, psychology, and innovation that allowed him to conquer nearly all of Europe. Let's break down the surprising tactics that made Caesar a true legend of warfare. Before we dive into his battle tactics, it's important to understand why Caesar was such a force. He wasn't born into power. He worked his way up through Roman society, starting from a young age. His ambition, combined with his ability to build alliances, made him a leader capable of rallying the people around him. Caesar's ability to read people was key. He understood that a good general wasn't just a strategist, but someone who could inspire loyalty and trust among his troops. This created a bond between him and his soldiers that made them willing to follow him into the most dangerous of situations. And one of Caesar's most surprising tactics was his use of speed. In an era where battles were often drawn out, Caesar understood the power of striking fast. His army was well trained to march long distances at incredible speed, allowing him to launch attacks before his enemies could react. A perfect example of this was during the Gallic Wars. Caesar's surprise attack on the Helvetii tribe in 58 BC caught them completely off guard. His soldiers marched over 20 miles a day, hitting their target before they even knew what was happening. This made his forces unpredictable and allowed them to take control of the battlefield. Caesar was also a master of battlefield formations. He understood that the traditional Roman legions were powerful but could be vulnerable in certain situations. He adapted his formations based on his enemies and the terrain. For example, against the Gauls, Caesar used a deep, solid formation to hold ground and overwhelm his opponents with sheer numbers. But when fighting more mobile enemies, he'd employ more flexible tactics, like a lighter formation, allowing his legions to move quickly and adapt to changing situations. One of the most famous formations he used was the testudo, or tortoise formation. This shield wall was nearly impenetrable, with soldiers using their shields to cover every angle. It became a symbol of Roman discipline and unity, and it worked wonders during sieges or when facing heavy missile attacks. Caesar's brilliance wasn't just in his physical tactics. He understood the psychological aspect of warfare. He knew how to manipulate the minds of his enemies, often playing on their fears and uncertainties. One famous example was during the Battle of Alesia in 52 BC, when Caesar besieged the Gallic stronghold of Vercingetorix. As the Gauls were pinned inside the city, Caesar created the illusion of invincibility. Not only did he have a double wall of fortifications, but he also used misinformation, spreading rumors that his reinforcements were about to arrive at any moment, increasing the psychological pressure on the defenders. On top of that, Caesar would often give speeches and conduct public ceremonies in front of his soldiers to boost morale and make them feel invincible, ensuring their loyalty and confidence in battle. Another surprising tactic Caesar used was his innovation in siege warfare. While traditional siege tactics relied heavily on brute force, Caesar introduced new technologies and methods that were far ahead of his time. During the siege of Alesia, he employed the use of complex trench systems and siege engines that allowed his forces to break through even the most fortified defenses. Caesar was a pioneer in the use of advanced siege tactics, combining Roman engineering skills with his own military genius. His ability to build bridges, fortifications, and even entire camps in a matter of days allowed him to maintain a logistical advantage over his enemies. When it came to supply lines, Caesar was known for his meticulous planning and ability to keep his troops fed and equipped in the harshest of environments. But perhaps the most underrated of Caesar's tactics was his mastery of diplomacy. While many think of Caesar as simply a warrior, he knew how to use political alliances to his advantage, both before and after battle. Caesar was brilliant at winning over local populations. After victories, he would integrate defeated tribes and cities into the Roman system, offering citizenship and protection in exchange for loyalty. This strategy not only kept his enemies from rebelling, but also expanded his power base, creating a vast network of supporters. Even after major defeats, Caesar would use diplomacy to secure temporary alliances, allowing him to regroup and rebuild his forces. His ability to shift from ruthless conqueror to skilled diplomat made him an unstoppable force on and off the battlefield. Lastly, Caesar was a master of deception. He understood that sometimes the most effective battle is the one you don't have to fight. Through a network of spies and informants, Caesar was often several steps ahead of his enemies.